I'd like to welcome you back. We're back to doing this fella. So far we've excuse me. So far we've carved the face and we've carved the hat. Now it's just adding details. Eventually we're going to get to the point where we're going to put this in here in the body or the scarf, whatever we decide. That is not scarf, neckerchief, bandana. But you can tell how far up this is. And I need to take some of that off because once I get that down to where I want it to be, then I'm going to make a mark here, and I won't carve below that mark. I'll carve above that mark because that'll be inside the hole. But we're not going there just yet. Still working on everything we need to work on. We've got the ears carved in, although I took a little bit back, and so we're going to come back in here and redo that part of the ear because I took off that tragus. Tragus is that wind flap that we talk about. Took off both of those because we narrowed those ears down. Somebody said in one of my earlier videos that it was hard to see what I was doing, so I'll try to remember to stay in the screen and bring it up closer. Like I said, I'm using a new camera and trying to figure out how close I need to be and how far away I need to be, what the lighting looks like. It's all different with every camera system, so I'll do my best to try to keep it in focus. I'll trim a little bit of that tragus up so that it looks real sticking out. Okay, we'll do that to the other side using this number 9 gouge, and I think it's about 1/4 inch wide. If I remember correctly, I've shown you that earlier in another video. So, and I'm just poking that in at about a 45-degree angle so I can get that indentation right there. And then I'm going to come back and make 2 cuts, one from the top to the middle of that cut, and then one from the bottom to match that, and that should get me, if I do it right, that should get me that tragus out of there. A little fuzzy in there, but that gets me where I need to go. I'm going to drop that camera down just a little bit. That might get us where we need to go a little better. I'll be able to see without me having to shove it right up in there. Somebody earlier said that they couldn't hardly see what I was doing, and that's part of the problem with doing these. When you do these and you're demonstrating, when you're up here, you're carving like this so you can see. Anybody looking at it can't, and so you can't see that. But we'll continue playing around with that. Grab a pencil here so we can make a mark or two, and I want to put in some nostrils. So what I usually do is right here where the center line comes through. That's where the cartilage in between the nostrils is going to be, and I'm going to make a mark on both sides of that. This is where one nostril is going to be, and this is where the other one's going to be. So you want your nose to be roughly about the same size. This one's tilted up just a little bit to this side because he's looking that way. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a flexible knife. This is my Drake 1.5 inch flexible knife. I've had this one for a long time. I really like it, especially when I need to get in around the eyes or something like this. And I'm going to go straight in. Make that cut straight in. Pull it out. And then I'm going to follow that line. Now, I know other people do this with a gouge, but I like doing it with a knife because when I make that cut, it's not perfectly symmetrical exactly the way the other one's going to be. And so I don't like them to be looking perfect. I like them to have a little bit of randomness to them. So I'm not deep enough in there. Also, I'll make that cut in there again. And then I'm going to reverse that and turn around and cut right up in that nostril. And if I do it right, it comes out to where it looks like when you look at that nose, there's an indentation there. You always got little fuzzies, it seems like. There we go. And we'll do that same thing to the other side. Feel free to make it as deep as you need to. I don't usually make them real deep because you're not really carving a big hole back there. You're just carving the indication. You know, when I was a painter, my painting instructor would say, you're not painting every leaf on the tree. You're only giving the impression of the tree having leaves. And so you got to be real careful about how much detail you have to put in on something, because sometimes it's not necessary. Sometimes it's just playing around. If you notice, the lip is almost straight up and down, so I'm going to take my knife And I'm just going to curl from about 2 millimeters above the lip and just give it a little bit of shape. See how that has that little lip right there? I've just added a little bit of shape to it to give it some kind of shape to that lip. Do it over here. I noticed it more pronounced on this side. It was thicker over here. And I just wanted to add a little bit of shape to that lip. If you don't like the sharp edge on the top of that lip, just take your knife and just go right along the side and just trim a little bit of that down. You don't need much, but all these little details that we're working on. Okay. Let me clean off underneath that nostril too. I didn't get deep as I wanted to right there. Take that little piece off there. There we go. That looks better. Take off that mark there that I drew on there. And some of these marks will come off when I go to finish it because I'm going to take a pad and kind of clean it up a little bit when I get done with it. All right, these sideburns are pretty thick. I'm going to trim them down a little bit, so I'm going to reach over and grab a fishtail gouge. This is my old fishtail gouge that I've had for a long time. And I'm just going to take some of that bulk of the sideburn down. Leave it thick if you want, leave it bushy if you want. I don't want it on mine on this one because I don't feel like it goes with where I'm headed. So I'm just trimming down a little bit of that thickness to the sideburn. I don't want them looking like mutton chops or like something I just glued on. I want them to look like they're supposed to. So that helps a little bit. Doesn't take off any of the width, just the thickness. And then I'm going to come in here. I'm going to come in here with that gouge that I had again. And I'm just going to give it some shape. So I'm just going to make some big cuts in here. Just giving it some kind of shape to a sideburn. And then that helps to trim it down as well. A little bit of it's overlapping the ear, so we'll keep that going when we do it. Do that same thing to the other side. Be aware of which way the hair is going to flow. If you want that hair to look natural, you got to follow some kind of normal flow. So it doesn't all go this way, and it doesn't all go this way. It kind of goes in a variety of different directions. After that, I'm then going to come in with a gouge. I've got this real small Ramelson gouge. Put my measuring stick away, so I better get back to it. This one doesn't have metric measurements on it, so we'll just go with the American. Looks like it's about 1/8 of an inch thick and about an angle of about a 45. I'm going to start right here at the ear, and I'm just going to carve where hair is. And I'm just going to make some random cuts in here, some deep, some not quite so deep, some overlapping. But you're just trying to get this hair on the sideburn to kind of look like a cowboy out on the range with some hair. A little bit of it sticking out from under his hat. They don't all have to always be going the same way. They don't all have to be the same thickness. Some of those don't want to come off very well. We'll cut across them and get them that way. And it just gives some randomness to that hair. Down here at the bottom, you got a square edge. Kind of pick that off away so it doesn't show up like you just got out of the barber shop. Right there in the corner. We'll do the same thing over here. We've made our big cuts. So we'll come back in with just a little bit of a shadow of it over here on the ear lobe. And then we're just going to go in here and just make some random deep and angled cuts. Don't forget the edges, because right out here on this edge, what you don't want is straight here, and you don't want straight right there. You want it to have some randomness to it. Randomnicity, is that a word? I doubt it, but it's going to be my word of the day. We want to give some randomnicity, so I'm going to take those cuts and go all the way outside of that little box of sideburn we were left with. Okay. If you're worried about how sharp, how straight it is there, turn it around and come back and just cut that edge off with your V-tool. You're just taking off a few of those things. And I realize it's probably hard to see that when I'm doing it, but you get a little bit of the idea of where I'm going. You're just trying to make sure the bottom of it is straight. Okay. We've already done the eyebrows. Now we've done the sideburns, and a lot of cleanup we've got to do on this one, because this is we've been just having some fun with it. Go back here, and I'm going to go behind the ear, and I'm going to shape down the sharp edge of this hair. That hair is pretty sharp, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it down with my fishtail gouge, because hair doesn't come to your skin and then have a really sharp edge unless you just got out of the beauty shop. And so most of the time that hair will come down and it just kind of fades away on your skin. So we won't have these sharp lines when we're doing this. And so what we do, once we trim that out and get that size, I'm going to come in here with the gouge. I like to start, because I'm in the back of the head, it's going to be hard to get a wide gouge in there. This is my flex cut. It's a number 11. Looks like it's about, I don't know, 3/8 maybe. Yeah, it's right at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/16. And I'm just going to randomly do like I did with the sideburns, roughly in the direction I want the hair to go. And I'm just going to make some cuts. Be careful as you're banging up against this hat. You don't want to break that brim off. It's not real fragile, but it's fragile enough that if you don't do it right, that stuff may just come off on you. So we're doing it with a big gouge just to get some shape to it. I've got some going sideways because we'll come down and we'll cut across those, and it'll make it look right. And so you notice I can't get in there with this one. Switch to that smaller one. I can get in there with that one, and then we'll come back in here with a gouge, starting as far up as you can without having to pry. You don't want to pry like this. You want to just get up in here and start making some haircuts, some individual strands of hair running the rough direction you want it to run. You want it to run from up here at the head down along the nape of the neck. It's hard to get up here and this back up here, but so I usually go sideways, lay the tool down sideways, and I can get sort of where I need to go. Same thing here. Just gonna make some cuts. Making long ones and short ones. And down here, when I get closer to the neck, I'll trim that out a little bit and add some real fine lines that taper off at the back of the neck. But I'm just trying to give it the overall shape of hair. And that'll allow you to get in here and see where you need to trim some sharp edges. I got a sharp edge right there below that ear. So I'm going to take that sharp edge, and then I'll grab a real small V, and right here at the edge, I'm just going to trail it off on the neck. Look like all those little fuzzies we get in between haircuts. So just making it look like the hair trails off there at the nape of the neck. And then with that small tool, you can get in here and get a few more cuts in some areas you couldn't get with the other tools. But if you have to, you can turn around and go up a little bit, but it's a little bit harder. It doesn't give you as much room, and you can leave a lot of marks up there underneath the hat, so then you'll have to come back in here and clean some of those out. But I think we did pretty good when we cleaned it up with our little brush. It'll make him look better. I think he's looking pretty good about now. Before we go to work on that neck, let's see how far we need to go. I'm going to marry the neck of the head, get it in there as far as I can go, and I'm going to make a cut. So that is as deep as I can go. So I'm going to have to cut at least that much off of the head. And that's just pure, just get in here and just cut it off. Understand that the bottom of that head, for the hole for the head, is flat. So if you get this at an angle and you don't get it at the right angle, it may sit a little bit crooked on you. But, you know, again, he's a cowboy and he doesn't sit always straight up. Maybe when he goes to church and he's all clean, but most of the time he might have a little slouch to him based on what he's gone through. So you could certainly go out to the bandsaw and be real careful, or a scroll saw, or even with a handsaw, and cut some of that off. But you got to be real careful. We're going to cut some of this off, but you got to be careful as you cut, because it could splinter on you like that. So just be a little bit careful. You're taking off a lot of wood because we had a long neck. The original one I had was real short. If you remember the first piece I started, I showed you that had a short neck, and that was about right, but it was still a little bit too long. And so we're just going to continue to trim this out and bring it down. So we brought down that much. I know that's not enough, but just to give you an idea of how far we have come, that's where we're at now. So we need to come down at least a ½ inch just to get that neck where we need to go. But if I go down too far, these two pieces back here will hit. So I'll just have to play around with it piece by piece. So take a moment off the screen or whatever and get that head where you need it to go. I can't stress enough how sharp your tools need to be when you do this. I went to a club meeting last night, and one of my friends talked about how his knives weren't very sharp, and I said, well, sharpen them. And a long discussion we had. A lot of people just aren't real comfortable sharpening their tools, and I get it. I mean, we were all there at one time. You don't want to ruin it. But that's one of the things you got to learn how to do, is sharpen your tools, because if you don't sharpen them, you got to pay somebody else to do it. We're getting closer. He looks a little better now. Still want to come down just a little bit more, so I'm going to take off about another ½ inch. But if you don't know how to sharpen it, find somebody who will be glad to teach you. I know all kinds of carvers that sharpen in a lot of different ways. I'm not telling you one way is any better than the other. Some people swear only by stones, and some swear only by hand, and some swear only by sandpaper, and some only do it electronically with a machine. I don't use a stone very much. When I need to shape something, I use a sandpaper. But for me, it's a matter of whatever works. And so each tool is going to be a little bit different. Get close, and I was wrong. It's still, we're not going to hit that back there, but we're getting close to where we need to be. Okay, we'll kind of let that go right there. We'll shape it as we get to it. Notice there's a sharp edge about right here that I'm going to trim down. There we go. There we go. All right. We've got his hair done. We got his sideburns done. I want to take a little bit more out right here where the arch is for the eye. Just a little bit. I don't need much, but I'm just going to separate that arch and that sideburn right there. That's the look I was looking for right there. I just wanted a little bit more separation right there. Hope you can see that. Right here. Do it over here again too, because that one's even higher. So I want to take that down a little bit more. So go to the edge of the eye, not taking off any of the stuff you've already cut out. The edge of the eye, and give it a little bit more of that zygomatic arch shape right there. Hopefully you can see that. All right. I don't know if you've given any thought to what kind of hat band you want, but where the crown and the brim meet, draw a line. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. This hat band can be everything from braided leather. It could be just a straight band. It could be one that looks like it's almost like a rope going around. If you don't know what a hat band looks like, Keep it simple on your first one, but when you do a few more of these things, go out and look at, Google some images, Pinterest or whatever, and try to figure out what hat bands look like. And I just noticed this side's a little bit higher, so I'm going to come back in here just a little bit more. Just take a little bit out of there. And it's a little bit higher back here. Right there. A couple places I didn't get to. But I think he looks okay. We still got to figure out what we're going to do with the back of this hat. So I'll trim off those marks that I drew on there because I don't really like them. We got to figure out what kind of crown we're going to have. So far we haven't given it a whole lot of thought. Or at least I haven't. Maybe you have. I hope you have thought about what you want to do with it. I started playing around with that extra head that I had, and I started playing around with his hat, looking more pointed up there at the top. This one we might just have a little bit of fun with him, as Bob Ross would say. Just get crazy. Have a little fun. It's your cowboy. So, sorry, not claiming I'm Bob Ross at all, but I don't mind channeling him. This old fella, I'm going to give him a sharp crease right up here in the hat. It might be better done with a big knife. I'm going to follow that crease over almost like it's been folded a couple times. See that hat? Yeah, sorry, I didn't hold it there long enough, did I? There's his hat brim. We'll take it all the way to the back. And I don't want it straight back. I want it kind of at an angle. So I'm just going to come back in here. Take a little bit of a bite out of that hat. Like it's been, it fell off his head during a stampede or something and got run over by something else. But just give it a little bit of funky shape. And I'm just eyeballing this. I don't have any particular way I want to go. Thin down the front. I like to take a big gouge and just give it a couple of. Sorry if my finger's getting wet. I'm trying to hold it so it doesn't. I'm not carving up against myself like I normally do. See how he's got a little divot there? We'll take another one and deepen it just a little bit. Don't want it any wider, but I do want it deeper. His hat's looking like it's been through a thing or two. Windstorm, scooping out water, whacking off the flies that get off on your face, or just having a little fun with this hat. Give a little more shape here. There's a little more shape here. I think I'll let that go right there. I like that hat. Now I'm just going to do a simple headband. I'm not going to worry about trying to add a lot of detail. We're at video number 7, so we don't wrap this up. We might be watching it all into the new year, but all I'm going to do is those lines that I drew, I'm going to separate the brim and the hat. So follow that all the way around the line that you drew. Don't have to go too deep, because you're going to have to come in here and shape it anyway. But I just want to follow that line that I drew. Took it off here when I shaped that hat, but just follow that line and make a match. Make sure it lies on the brim and not too high up on the hat. You don't want that hat band riding up here. So you can see where we cut that in. Now we've got a lip there that we can take off with the fishtail gouge. Just come in here and flatten that brim. Just start to flatten that brim just a little bit. Be careful not to cut into your head too much. You're going to have to clean that up. And when you get about right here, it gets hard to get in there. So just switch to a knife. And you're just going to be taking off that little bit of lip you left when you cut in the hat band. You don't need to take off much. You're just separating it out. back to the fishtail gouge back here at the back. Okay, so you get an idea where we're going with that hat brim. We'll do the same thing with the other one right above that. Start at one end, one corner, follow it around. Look how much fun we're having. I thought I just sat down here a minute ago. We're at 25 minutes on the video already, so woot! No better way to spend a day than carving. I guess soaking in a hot tub might come close, but I don't have one of them. And every time I stay in a hotel somewhere that's got one, it seems like they afford 11 kids in there, so I don't get to do that much. It's alright. If that's the worst thing that happens today is I don't get to soak in a hot tub, I'll be alright. So I'm going to take my hat, or my knife, and I'm going to go in that groove above, the upper groove that I cut in, and follow it around in that groove. So you can take out just a little bit. I already did the bottom one. So this is the top of the hat band. Going around. Make sure you don't have a lot of stray cuts in there. And when you do that, then we'll come in and we'll separate that hat band just a little bit by taking out a little sliver above that slit that we just cut. Here at the front of the hat, it'll get splintery on you, so be real careful. See how you get more of a divot in there than you really want. So try experimenting with whichever way your hand fits in getting into there to separate that hat band and the hat. Use fishtail gouge on the back of it just a little bit. Some stray marks back there. I'll go ahead and cut off with that, and then just a few here on the front to clean that up. Take my brush, brush him off, get some of those fuzzies off there a little bit. And I like that hat. I come back in here and clean up with a little cuts we need to make or need to fix up and things like that, but you can do that on your own without me having to guide you through that, because you'll know by this point you'll know what you need to do. A little bit of cuts right there. Okay, I like that hat. I'm gonna give him a little bit more of a point to the back. Take a little bit more off there. Yeah, there we go. Looks like a fella that says this is my comfortable hat, and I may swap it out when I go to town, but this is my comfortable hat. Shape this brim just a little bit more. I want to take off some of these cuts here and some of these marks. I'll show you how I finish before I paint when we're done carving here, but I just want to get past the part we're at now and get to the details, and we're just about there. I showed you earlier in an earlier video how I separated that hat from the head. We're going to do the same thing right here with the head and the sideburns. Lay that knife flat on the head, go up into the hat, make a groove, and then cut out a slit. You don't need much, but just enough that when you remove that slit, it looks like the head goes up under that hat. Trim that sideburn back just a little bit. Come back in here and give it some more hair. Want that hair back up under that flop over. Do the same thing here. Go up, lay it flat, go up to where we made that last cut we stopped about right there. Flip it around, take that slit out, and it makes that head look like it goes up into that hat. Move the cut marks. Finish by adding a few more details in there with that we need to get to. I apologize if it's hard to see back in there. I'm trying to keep it close to the camera as I can. All right, I believe I believe. So he might just about be done. We'll finish him up a little bit later. I'm going to cut a little bit more off of this neck. I don't need much more off, I think. I'm okay. And hopefully you've been given some thought as to whether you want to do a shirt on him or whether you want to do just a neckerchief. On this particular project, I'm gonna do it with a neckerchief because I think that lends itself more to that. The more you put bodies out here, you have to worry about how far out you're going to go. Make a wider one, like Claude Bolton would have done. You can add shoulders and a collar. This one, if I did a collar here, the collar would go off here. So I'm going to just leave it as a bandana, and we're going to call it good at that point. But got him just about where we need to go. I want him to go just a little bit deeper because I can cut more of this out. And so I'm gonna make that hat go down into that body just a little bit more, of that neckerchief. Funny, I interchanged the term neckerchief and scarf, and I was doing a Boy Scout ceremony for one of my scouts, and I was assistant scoutmaster at the time, and it happened to be the scoutmaster's son who was getting his Eagle presentation that day, and I did a quick impromptu kind of talk about the neckerchief or scarf. Scoutmaster pointed out, women wear scarves, men wear neckerchiefs. Okay, that's always stuck with me. Okay, so we're about where we need to go, and if we stand him up, you see he's got a little bit of a lean to the neck, so he doesn't come straight up, he's off a little bit. And I like the way he's looking so far. All right, let's take him out of there, and we'll start talking about, I'm going to put a few tools away here while I'm chatting. We'll start talking about what his neckerchief's going to look like, because what you've got is an opportunity to do something like this, where we can make his neckerchief just you know, a good, instead of just a place to lay his head, it's a place where you build the picture. So in this case, what we've got is a picture of a cowboy, and when we put his neckerchief in there, we complete the ensemble, I guess, if you want to say. So we're gonna give him a neckerchief that requires drawing. So I'm gonna take my pencil, and I'm gonna bring. You have to decide how far down that thing is gonna be. Is it gonna stop at the top of the base? Is it gonna be part of the base when you? Sorry, I had to reach behind me. Is the base? Is the neck? I almost said scarf. Is that neckerchief going to come all the way down into the base? Is it going to come all the way to the bottom? So you have to make that decision. In the back, we have the tails. And so we'll draw those in, because right out here we're going to have the knot. The knot of the bandana. Have that knot right there. And then from there we're just going to loosely, this will be raised up, and this stuff out here will be brought down to level. So we'll be somewhere like that. But back here I've got to decide where's the neckerchief tails at. So I just randomly draw them like that. All kinds of configurations for doing that. But I'm going to start by taking out the knot. It's basically this square here. And then I'm going to take this out down to here. So I'm going to have this round up to here. Round up to here. So a good portion of this is going to come off. And then down here we're going to bring this realize I'm making a lot of marks on the drawing, but you get the idea of where I'm going, and then we'll have a couple of droops like that. Sort of kind of like that one. Okay. All right, here we go. 34 minutes. Where'd my knives go? Start with a knife. Okay, actually I'll start with a V tool first. I want to V-tool that part of the neckerchief so I know where I'm going. This is cross grain, so to get away from you if you're not anchored. And then I'm just going to go right down into that groove and start trimming to it. I'm trimming so I don't cut off the knot. I want to leave as much of the knot as I can. I don't have to. I mean, I could have the knot. And in actuality, you could slide the knot over here. You could have the tails down here where it's knotted here and tails here, and then the bandana goes back here. You lose a lot of the bandana when you do that, but you can do it that way. Yeah. Again, in grain, hard to carve. Harder to carve. It's not that hard, but it's hard enough. I left it big because that's bigger than it's going to be. I left it big because I know as I carve across this end grain, the knife slips and starts and slips and starts, and so I'm going to bang into that part. And if I don't leave it big, then I'm going to end up with pieces with cuts I have to clean up a lot in there. So you get an idea of where I'm going right there. And there we are. We'll shape it up a little bit later when we get down to it because it's going to be rounded. And when we put that head in there, that knot's going to lie right at the back of his head, so we're going to trim a little bit of that off back this way too. So come in here with my gouge. What I really want to do to shaping these, I want to cut all this out here, cut all this out here, and that way it'll give me a little bit more room to get in there. So I'm just going to come in here with a gouge, with a V-tool, sorry. I'm going to carve that up to that top lip. Okay. Now you can see the farther in you go, the more likely you are to get in here. I've got one laying around here I was doing the other day, and there's a little hole back in here that when I fill it up with just a little bit of putty, you won't notice it. But there's a little hole in there that shows his neck. Don't want to do that unless we absolutely have no choice. So we'll follow those lines all the way up to the knot, and then all this out here is going to be cut off. So I'm going to just hog it out, as we call it. Still get a kick out of that reporter the other day. He thought hogging out was something different until I explained it, and then I don't know whether they lost interest in that term or not. But anyway, it's funny. It's funny to me, but then I'm easily amused. So stop cutting there. We'll come in here, we'll start cutting out some chips out of there and rounding it back, because this is basically, if I wanted to, the bandana coming down here, you could have the back of the shirt coming in that way, but I don't know that I want to go there. I want to leave it just as part of the bandana. We'll have it starting over there and disappearing somewhere down one of them little rabbit holes. But again, we're just getting in here. Put my tools away. I don't want to put my tools away. Getting in here with one wood removal tool or another, whichever one you use. I've left this back here where I've got a little bit of support here, so when I'm cutting this out, I've got a little bit of support. It's not completely disappeared, but a lot of this will come out because I don't want it in my final carving. It'll come up with a bandana will come up to right here and then match right up there. So it'll be somewhat like this. The rest of the bandana will come in here like this, curve out like that, and then we'll remove a good portion of this back, kind of like we've done here. All right, we're just gonna continue going on. Sorry if I'm off the screen again. I lost my little dot. I don't know where my little dot is, so I keep forgetting where I'm at. I watch some carvers online that don't ever say anything, and I alternate between whether I should try that or not. If I didn't say anything, I'd get some people say, well, why didn't you tell me what you were doing? And when I do say something, some folks are like, well, why don't you just shut up and carve? So I don't know. I just have fun carving. I enjoy teaching, and I hope those of you that stick around and watch are at least having as much fun as I am and enjoying it. And if you're not, well, I don't know. Go put on Oprah or something and watch Oprah. You'll have a lot of fun watching that, I'm sure. I'm just going to sit here and carve. Come on. Get out of there. Okay. Before I do too much of that back, we know where we're going with this. Let's start working on this. So I know I'm going to come in, and on the back I can carve down because the wood grain runs this way, and as I carve I'm pushing everything against each other, and so it's allowing me to make cuts and cut that off and get to the shape eventually that I want. You have to figure out what kind of shape you want to the base. Is it just going to be flat, or are you going to tool it as well? On the front, again, the grain running this way. If I carve that way, it'll split all this off, so I've got to carve up. And I just want to give it, let me get a bigger tool so I can get bigger cuts. Of course, if you cut, you got to hang on to it to make cuts. So I'm just going to give that kind of a shape up here on both sides, because I know I'm going to cut all the way down through there, and I know I'm going to trim a lot of that, and I know that the bandana's still going to show up here. So I've got to leave enough room for the bandana while I'm still removing a lot of this wood back here. Let me get one that's not as flexible as that one. Yeah, come on. Here we go. And so I'm just going to round all the way down through here. I'm not going to start shaping the bandana in the front yet, but I just want to get down there to it. Because eventually, if I wanted to, I would take the corners off at a 45-degree angle, or round the back, or whatever. And so up here, that's going to make a difference on what I do there. So if I take this off, I'm over to where that bandana is, so now I can indent that. And over here I would do the same thing. I'm over where I want it to be on my cuts here, and I've left room for the bandana to be inserted in there. Do that on the back so I keep myself symmetrical. You know, I always talk about bases when I talk about carving. And I think when you go do carving, a lot of us forget about the base, and it becomes almost an afterthought. And I think a lot of us would do better, myself included, if we included the base as part of the planning process to start with. I know what I want the base to look like, sorta, in my head, and I just got to keep that in mind knowing that I can do whatever I need to that base to tell the story. Think of a base like the frame to your picture. If you've ever painted, you know that the wrong frame does not enhance your picture. And so the same thing will happen with a base. I'm just giving this a little bit of shape while I'm sitting here thinking about my next move. When you are painting a picture, if you just go down to the thrift store or the Dollar General store and buy a cheap frame, at the end of it, most of us won't be pleased with the picture that we end up with. And so we got to be careful about how we're framing the story, essentially, because you're telling a story with your carving. The question is, what story do you want to tell? How is your story going to be perceived if the foundation isn't done properly? So take a little time to figure out what you want on your base. Maybe you want to carve a horseshoe back in here in the bottom of this base. I don't know. I'm not here to tell you how to do it. I'm here to tell you what I'm going to do with mine. Okay, I'm working all around this thing because I don't want to get a slave to one corner. Right now I am just sort of rounding this knot, and I want it smaller than I have it because I don't need that great big thing sticking out the back of his head. But I do need something, because if I don't, then I got to worry about what story I'm trying to tell. So that knot back there, I can move it back some more and angle it around this way, but I think he looks okay that way. I'm going to draw a line on here on his neck, because what I don't want is to carve below that line. That's what's down in the head. And so on my carving, all my carving would be above this line. So whatever I'm doing to shape the neck would be above that line instead of below it. So I just want to make sure. Okay, so I say don't carve below that, but what I'm going to do is trim it out a little bit, because it's hard to get in there. And so I'm going to take off, you know, a 32nd of an inch all the way around, because that wood has been cut with not a knife, it's been cut with a bit, and so it's not real smooth. And so when I cut just a little bit off each side all the way around, what I should get is a little bit smoother insertion. So when I get that in there, not quite so hard to push in there. And now I can decide which way he's going to go. He's going to have a bandana, so this is going to dip down a little bit more, but still underneath in that hole, it's still going to be held tightly to the head. And so we're going to play around and do a little bit more. I'll take my knife here in a little bit. We'll remount that hole to make it a little bit bigger, so it looks like his head is not being strangled by whatever shirt he's wearing. But anyway, we'll work on that bandana. So from here, it's going to be roughly the wood that I remove, at least the front part of the wood. And so it's going to be somewhere down there. So I'm going to take my V-tool and I'm going to go right up that side and just outline that line that I've got. One of these days I'd figure out how to stay in the screen, and I apologize for that. I hate it when I watch a video and the person's out the screen. I'm yelling at the TV or yelling at the screen saying, "Get in the picture." There we go. We'll shape that base a little bit. I'm going to make an indentation here, a fairly aggressive indentation. I want to get back in there fairly good. I'll do it 2 or 3 times as I need to, but I'm just going in that groove. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to cut part of it out. I don't need to cut out much of it, but I need to cut out some of it so it gives you an idea of where I'm going. And all I'm doing is separating that bandana from whatever the back of the base is going to look like. Base can be left bare wood with a sealer over top of it, but I'm just going to work on the bandana going up toward that knot, kind of like that. So I'll be taking a lot of this wood off one way or the other, and a lot of this stuff over here. Come in here with the fishtail gouge because that gets a little bit awkward to get in there with a knife, but I can come in here a little bit more and keep using that tool to round that base and separate that bandana. Neckerchief, not a scarf. So I'm going to end the video about now, and I'll go ahead and continue to shape this, and then we'll come back and we'll work on this bandana a little bit more, but I don't think you need to sit here and watch me remove all this wood. You know what it looks like and you know how to do it, so we'll end that video about right there. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.